Most people don't realize this, but the reason certain people keep draining you, disrespecting you, and pulling you into the same exhausting patterns has nothing to do with them being toxic, and everything to do with something you are unknowingly doing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because this isn't about cutting people off, being more confident, or finally saying the perfect thing. In fact, if that's what you're relying on, you're already losing. What I'm about to share isn't comfortable. It challenges how you've been taught to handle difficult people. It exposes why confrontation hasn't worked, why explaining yourself made things worse, and why the more emotionally intelligent you are, the more likely you've been targeted. This is not motivational noise. This is a psychological shift that changes how people experience you instantly. If you've ever walked away from a conversation, replaying it in your head, thinking of what you should have said, if you've ever felt your body tense just because someone's name appeared on your phone, if you've ever wondered why certain people seem to have access to you, no matter how much distance you create, this video is for you. Because the truth is, toxic people don't stay because they're powerful. They stay because they're effective. And the moment they stop being effective, they disappear. Not dramatically, not emotionally, quietly. By the end of this video, you'll understand the one internal shift that makes boundaries automatic, silence authoritative, and calm unsettling to the very people who once controlled the dynamic. You won't need to announce anything. You won't need to explain yourself. You won't need to fight. And once you apply this, even once, you'll notice something strange. The same people who used to provoke you will hesitate. The conversations will shorten. The tension will evaporate, not because they changed well, but because you did. Stay with me. This isn't information, it's liberation. Most people misunderstand why toxic people choose them. They think it's because they're too kind, too empathetic, too patient, or too giving. And while those traits may be present, they are not the reason. Toxic people are not attracted to kindness. They are attracted to access. Emotional access, psychological access. The kind of access that allows them to reach inside you and move something. Strength does not repel toxicity. Emotional availability invites it. Here is the uncomfortable truth: most people avoid toxic individuals are highly observant. They are constantly scanning their environment, consciously or unconsciously, for nervous systems they can plug into. They notice who explains themselves too much, who reacts quickly, who feels compelled to clarify, defend, justify, or emotionally engage. They are not looking for weak people. They are looking for responsive people. Responsiveness is not the same as weakness, but in the presence of toxicity, it becomes a vulnerability. When someone says something sharp and you feel the urge to correct them, that urge is data. When someone disrespects you and your body tightens, that reaction is information. When someone misunderstands you and you feel a deep need to be understood, that is access. Toxic people are excellent at detecting these signals because they survive on them. Every emotional reaction you give teaches them something about you. It shows them where your self-worth is tied. It shows them what matters to you. It shows them where your internal stability lives and where it collapses. Over time, without realizing it, you train them. You teach them which words land, which silences disturb you, which accusations make you scramble to restore balance. This is not manipulation in a cinematic sense. It is behavioral conditioning in real time. This is why confrontation often fails. People assume that if they just say the right words, draw the right boundary, or finally stand up for themselves, the toxic behavior will stop. But boundaries spoken from emotional reactivity are not boundaries. They are invitations for escalation. Because what the toxic person hears is not the content of your words, but the emotional charge underneath them. They hear intensity, urgency, need, and need is leverage. Toxic people do not stay where they are ineffective. They stay where they are impactful. If they can still move you emotionally, they remain engaged. If they can still disrupt your internal state, they continue. This is why some people can say very little and command immense respect, while others explain themselves endlessly and are still dismissed. Respect is not generated by clarity alone. It is generated by emotional self-containment. Psychologically speaking, many toxic dynamics are regulation strategies. The toxic individual is dysregulated internally, and they use external emotional reactions to stabilize themselves. Your anger, your sadness, your defensiveness, Even your attempts to fix things become tools for them to discharge tension or feel significant. When you react, they regulate. When you don't, they are forced to sit with themselves, and most cannot tolerate that. This is where philosophy quietly enters the conversation. If your sense of self depends on how others interpret you, then anyone who chooses to misinterpret you holds power. If your peace depends on being seen as good, fair, or reasonable, then anyone willing to distort reality can destabilize you. The more you outsource your internal validation, the more vulnerable you become to those who exploit it. Emotionally secure individuals do not need to prove their character in hostile environments. They understand something very simple: people committed to misunderstanding you are not confused, they are invested, and you cannot reason someone out of a position they emotionally benefit from maintaining. Trying to do so is not strength, it is self-betrayal disguised as maturity. This is why toxic people rarely bother individuals who are deeply grounded, not because those individuals are aggressive or intimidating, but because there is nothing to hook into. Their responses are measured, their silence is complete. Their sense of self does not rise or fall based on external noise. They are not emotionally vacant, but they are emotionally sovereign. There is a subtle but critical shift that happens when you understand this. You stop asking, "Why do they keep treating me this way?" and start asking, "What am I emotionally providing that makes this dynamic possible?" This question is not self-blame, it is self-reclamation. It returns agency to where it belongs. When you stop feeding the dynamic starves. When you no longer offer emotional fuel, the fire dies. This does not require cruelty. It does not require withdrawal from life. It requires internal discipline. The discipline to pause before reacting. The discipline to tolerate discomfort without resolving it externally. The discipline to let silence do the work your explanations never could. This is also why toxic people often escalate right before disappearing. When they sense emotional access closing, they push harder. They provoke more sharply. They attempt guilt, blame, or character attacks. This is not strength, it is panic. It is the last attempt to regain regulation through you. If you hold steady during this phase, something important happens. The pattern breaks. And when the pattern breaks, the power dynamic shifts permanently. Not because you dominated them, but because you removed yourself from the equation they depended on. You became emotionally non-compliant, and emotional non-compliance is deeply threatening to anyone who relies on control rather than connection. What most people never realize is that you don't need to become harder, colder, or more aggressive to stop toxic behavior. You need to become less available to it, less reactive, less explainable, less investable. Toxic people cannot survive in environments where their presence produces no emotional yield. This insight changes how you move through the world. You begin to value your internal state more than being understood. You choose regulation over reaction. You allow people to think what they think without rushing to correct it. And paradoxically, this is when respect begins to appear naturally. Not because you demanded it, but because your emotional independence made disrespect ineffective. When you understand that toxic people feed on access, not strength, you stop trying to prove how strong you are. You simply close the door quietly, and the silence that follows is not emptiness, it is peace. And once you experience what life feels like without being emotionally accessible to chaos, you realize something profound. The most powerful boundary you will ever set is the one that no longer requires explanation. Most people believe boundaries are something you say, a sentence, a statement, a line you draw with words. Don't talk to me like that. I won't tolerate this. This is my boundary. And while those sentences sound strong, they often fail in the very situations where boundaries matter most. Not because the words are wrong, but because words alone are not boundaries. They are announcements, and announcements without internal alignment are easily ignored. A real boundary is not verbal, it is neurological. It lives in your nervous system long before it ever reaches your mouth. If your body is tense while you're setting a boundary, if your voice carries urgency, if your mind is racing with the need to be understood or validated, the other person feels that immediately. They may not consciously know why, but they sense instability, and instability invites pressure, not respect. This is why so many people say, "I set boundaries but they don't work." What they really mean is, "I stated my limits, but my nervous system was still available." And availability is what toxic behavior feeds on. You can say no with your mouth and yes with your energy at the same time. Toxic people always listen to the energy. Emotional unreachability is the boundary beneath the boundary. It is not silence. It is not withdrawal. It is not emotional shutdown. It is the ability to remain regulated, steady, and internally grounded regardless of what someone else says or does. It is the moment you stop needing the other person to change in order for you to feel okay. Most people confuse emotional unreachability with coldness, but coldness is still reactive, coldness is armor, and armor is heavy. Emotional unreachability is lighter than that. It's clarity without heat, presence without engagement, awareness without absorption. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe they criticized you, maybe they misrepresented you, maybe they crossed a line. Notice what happened inside your body. Did your chest tighten? Did your breathing shorten? Did your mind immediately start preparing a response? That internal shift is what toxic people feel, not the words you say next. That shift tells them whether the door is still open. A regulated nervous system sends a very different message. It says, I'm here, but I'm not available for this. No explanation, no justification, no performance. And because there's no emotional charge, there's nothing to push against. The interaction loses momentum. This is why emotional unreachability is so powerful. It removes friction. Toxic dynamics require friction to exist. They require resistance, defensiveness, emotional heat. When you remove that, the dynamic collapses under its own weight. From a psychological standpoint, boundaries fail when they are driven by fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of being misunderstood, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment. When you set a boundary from fear, you are